Tell me about your skills. Such a simple question. And yet, despite a lifetime of lived experience, of overcoming obstacles, of doing great work, despite all that's at stake when that question gets asked, it's one that most people struggle to answer confidently. As Kenny mentioned, I'm a career workforce and economic developer and a passionate advocate for this work. I live and breathe this stuff, y'all. It's all I've ever done, it's all I've ever known in my working life. But like most people in this profession, in the work that we do, my journey to this career was indirect. In fact, the experience that has yielded me the majority of my transferable skills, I've never even listed on a resume. Can you guess what it is? Don't worry, I'm going to ask again in a few minutes, and I'll drop a few hints along the way. It didn't take Justin very long to guess it. He guessed it straight out of the gate. But I started my journey into this line of work back in the spring of 2000, when, as a graduating senior from a relatively unknown, obscure liberal arts college in San Antonio, I took a popular, time-honored approach to my postgraduate job search and journey. I procrastinated hard. You see that girl? She's smiling nervously, not just because she's wearing black polyester in the midday sun in San Antonio in the middle of May, but because it's graduation day. She knows there's a bill coming due from Sallie Mae for her student loans, and she doesn't have the heart to tell her parents that she has yet to apply to a single job. I hadn't applied to any jobs. But fortunately, I was an economics major. We were between recessions at the time, and this was a kinder, gentler labor market than the one that we face today. So I was able to find paid work in city government following graduation. I like to think that divine providence was actually at work, because from that very first job in local economic development, I entered the most rewarding, richest career experience. And to be honest, it's become something of an obsession. Helping individuals, the companies they work for, the communities they live in, figure out not just how to navigate, but how to thrive through the twists and turns of our unpredictable economy, to see around corners and to prepare proactively for what's to come in the future of work. They say there are no mistakes in this life. And while there are a lot of different pathways within workforce and economic development, I've traveled most of them. From economic development to workforce development, local government to state government, big consulting to nonprofits, even lobbying and philanthropy, but most recently, tech and AI. Just before the pandemic, I was preparing to do one of my career switches, at the time, destination unknown, and I realized I probably needed to upskill myself. I realized I needed to learn some more data science. I'd been hearing all about data science. It was the hot topic. And I realized that since I'd gone to school, newer methods had been introduced. I wasn't sure I would be able to credibly claim my skills anymore unless I brushed up. So I went on to Coursera, typed in the words data science, hit enter, and within about an hour, I encountered the classic conundrum that most people face when they try to go online to teach themselves a new skill. Complete and utter content chaos. Did you know that there are over 3,200 results on Coursera for data science? And that's just Coursera. It's not including LinkedIn Learning or Udemy or edX or any other learning platform. I was completely overwhelmed. But I didn't give up. I tried to filter and sort the results. I went on YouTube and watched some videos to try to figure out whether I needed to learn Python or R programming language. I ended up filtering by reviews by other users to see if there were some options that stood head and shoulders above the rest. I even read some guy's blog about EdTech. But after another hour, I was starting to become crestfallen. I was getting discouraged, frustrated. So I took a popular and time-honored approach to cognitive overload. I procrastinated. And I went to the kitchen and made myself a sandwich. And as I ate lunch and grumpily clicked around, trying to avoid the 3,000 options that were, at this point, frankly, mocking my inability to make a decision, I clicked on the Careers tab. I was pretty sure that all they would be looking for were salespeople and software developers, and I wasn't really interested in either. But instead, I found that Coursera was looking for something called a skills transformation consultant. The clouds parted. The angel harps began to play. Ah! Providence and procrastination had smiled upon me once again. So I closed out the tab, fired up LinkedIn, went and found somebody who knew somebody who worked at that company, and within a month, I was employed as a skills transformation consultant, helping others avoid the content chaos that I had fallen into and getting paid to do it. Side note, I objectively failed in upskilling myself that day. However, I like to think that it served a purpose because in the process, I helped many others avoid the content chaos that I had found myself in. And also, I discovered a different career trajectory out of it. But what do you think happened not 1 month into that job? While I was onboarding, one of my colleagues presented to me a presentation he had made where he had proposed to our executive team to completely automate our role using machine learning, thereby doing away with the need for skills transformation consultants completely at the company. Wow. After going through a career switch, moving into tech, going through the emotional gauntlet that is a recruiting process and negotiating a deal, starting a job, and then climbing up into onboarding, and finally feeling confident that I'd found work that not only I was good at, but that I liked as well, how do you think I reacted to the, hey, let's automate our jobs presentation? Do you think it was shock? Disbelief? Maybe a big eye roll? Perhaps I gaslit my colleague a little bit. I think you know it was all of the above. But I was new to the company and I didn't want to rock the boat. So I tried to be conversational and not poke the bear. Why would you want to do that? I asked, inquisitively, hoping that I could maybe elicit some of his thinking about this. His cheerful, very techno-optimistic response told me that from his perspective, the automation of our jobs by AI was a foregone conclusion, a desirable outcome that would actually make the company more productive, improve the bottom line, and by extension, pump up the value of our stock options. We were simply human placeholders for work that machine intelligence was always intended to do. I was incredulous. I was irritated. And I was also fearful. I mean, I'm a highly educated knowledge worker, well-versed in the language of future of work and skills. I can't be that easily replaced, right? I'll ask for a show of hands. How many people today in this room tonight actively use AI daily in the course of their work? All right, if you use ChatGPT or large language models, keep your hands up. And I don't just mean sharing those annoying tip sheets on LinkedIn where everyone says, hey, I asked ChatGPT this thing and here's what it said. All right, second question. How many people in this room tonight are anxious about AI's ability to potentially impact their jobs? Interesting. Much fewer hands. Final question. How many people are concerned on behalf of those we serve in the workforce ecosystem about AI's ability to impact their jobs? All right. So we have empathy for the potential of what this technology can do, not just for ourselves, but for others. I want to share a little bit of data with you all. In 2020, the World Economic Forum published a Future of Jobs report. And in that report, it said that automation by AI would eradicate a massive number, 85 million jobs globally. But the silver lining was that AI would create far more jobs than it would erase. And it would create fundamentally new work that would keep us more than adequately employed. About a month later, the pandemic happened and the shutdown started. In its most recent update, which happened about a month or two ago, the World Economic Forum noted that the human-machine frontier had fundamentally shifted, that automation of tasks by AI had proven a bit more difficult than the original projections had estimated. It hadn't progressed as quickly as they had thought. However, the automation of decisions by large language models and things like ChatGPT had actually proved easier than originally estimated and had actually accelerated faster than they had thought. So in the next 5 years, AI was still expected to eradicate a really large number of jobs globally, but it wouldn't create as many new ones as the original projections had estimated. Somehow in the course of a pandemic, we went from a net surplus of jobs to be created to a net deficit. And not only that, it wouldn't just be the rote, repetitive, service industry or low-skilled jobs that were originally supposed to be the most vulnerable to AI automation. It would be creative work, knowledge work, work at all levels. And in fact, the vast majority of workers would need to upskill substantially to maintain skills relevance in a generative AI-enabled world. If I ask those same 3 questions again, do you think your answer would be the same? Do you think you'd feel more strongly about any of your answers? I want to point out, I won't continue further with that Coursera story, but suffice to say, there are still humans doing skills transformation. They still add a ton of value. We haven't been replaced by machines as yet. But I want to point out the uncomfortable truth that, like it or not, you are already using AI today. And in fact, you're using it probably at a level that exceeds your current consciousness. Every search result, every engagement online, every like or comment that you leave, the apps that you use for productivity to improve your work, they're all leaving a digital trail that is making machine learning and AI smarter and more effective every day, accelerating that automation of decisions and increasing it exponentially. The challenge becomes when the ease with which we use AI and the ease with which we're training it and the convenience that it gives us rubs up against what scholars have termed the industrial era mindset. And that's that 20th century construct about work and careers that frames them as static, predictable, linear, meritocratic. Exactly the opposite of what they are becoming under the influences of digitalization and artificial intelligence. We can't choose which disruptors we're going to react to. But tonight is a moment, as Kenny mentioned, as underdogs, where we can either cower or we can choose to be courageous. We can react, or better yet, we can seize this opportunity to reframe. The choice is yours. The global workforce may in fact contract. WEF estimates by approximately 2% over the next 5 years. The silver lining is that the people in this room tonight who represent this community, we are in the job creation and reemployment business. We are uniquely positioned to help anticipate and deal with these shifts and help others do so as well. It's true, we must now all upskill and reskill on a nearly continuous basis for an ambiguous future of work, the skills of which may not even exist yet. That being the case, the people in this room are the ones who are transforming and growing businesses, changing industries, and are by extension in the skills transformation business as well. We can't stop this AI train, but the silver lining is that we're already on board it, and we can in fact steer it, and to some extent, we can dictate its destination. The kicker is that the very technology that appears to threaten our job security can also be put to work and should be put to work in service of helping us identify, transform, and adapt to the world that it creates. AI and workforce and economic development specifically can help us overcome some of the historical challenges of our field. Rather than using historical labor data to analyze how work has behaved in the past, we can actually use AI to see around corners and understand how work is evolving before it becomes apparent in labor market data. Rather than trying to force fit a one-size-fits-all educational model to a very diverse population and a really messy life cycle of work, AI can help us continually upskill and reskill with a level of unprecedented personalization down to the individual and your own lived experience. Rather than funding many similar initiatives in many different places and hoping for the best, throwing good money after bad, AI can help us identify what works and what doesn't, and really understand quite a bit about the determinants and the whys of what works. And rather than serving a fraction of the job seeker population with programs that have complex and rigid rules that oftentimes inhibit their long-term success, AI can help us serve more people at scale, more equitably and more flexibly than ever before. And most importantly, AI in our very intersectional ecosystem of educators, workforce developers, economic developers, and employers can help us harmonize our efforts using the language of data and skills, rather than speaking in discordant tones that keep us from achieving our mutual aims. All right, I mentioned that I had an experience to which I owe quite a bit of my most transferable skills, and yet I've never put it on a resume. Has anyone been able to guess yet what it is? Shout it out. We'll put it on the slide, procrastination. Yeah. What's that? I am not a mom, no. You're getting close. Theater was the answer, and you're getting close. All right, I'm going to tell you. I grew up in the choir. Oh, yeah, that's me. I was also, at one point, one of the taller girls in my class, if you can believe it. So, yes, growing up in the choir, it's definitely something. I would have accepted cheerleading as well if anyone had shouted that out, because I did that later in college, cheerleading. But cheering for underdogs, in fact. But the skills that are gained through hobbies and activities, things like growing up in the chorus, those are skills of preparation, self-study. I taught myself how to read music using a keyboard and a book. This was before the internet. You just had to sit there and figure it out yourself. Discipline, communication, performance, teamwork. It takes teamwork to harmonize, particularly when there are people who don't wish to blend. They want to be on American Idol, and they want to stand out. Leadership, influence. And I'll add to that humility and resilience, because there's a fair amount of rejection, disappointment, and embarrassment in performing arts and performance hobbies, like singing in the choir, and in some instances, like content creation and thought leadership. But we'll leave that for the after party. I can tell you more about that later. But ultimately, I bring this up to say that I use myself as an example, but every person in this room tonight has similar hidden skills. You don't list them on a resume, but they have informed your journey. They make you stronger in the labor market, and we should be surfacing them, and we should be applying them to your opportunities. We should be using them to unlock more pathways. AI can do that in ways that our traditional hiring infrastructure, our resumes, our ATS systems, our HR departments are currently not able to do. AI meets workforce partners where they are, and the company I work for, Skyhive Technologies, the partners we work with run the gamut. It's everything from opportunity youth and refugees and newcomers to career and technical education programs and workforce development boards. And we're so fortunate because tonight we have on the panel one of our esteemed partners, and that's Opportunity at Work. So you heard Justin and Kenny talk about how they were stars. Skyhive and Opportunity at Work have partnered together and used AI technology to build an opportunity marketplace for stars called StellarWorks, which uses AI to surface the skills that are gained through formal and informal work and learning experiences and connect stars to opportunities on the basis of their skills. And at the same time, it uses that same AI to help corporations, governments, businesses see hiring through a skills lens, not through outdated proxies for ability and skill. This is really important because think about what it could mean for the populations of Louisiana. We see the need to surface these hidden skills the most with underserved and vulnerable populations. But imagine what it could look like for young people across Louisiana who use AI to really explore skills and careers from an early age, using their first experiences of work, their summer jobs, their extracurriculars, to start being a launching pad to understanding the working world. Imagine what it could look like for preventing Louisianans from being displaced in their jobs due to economic shocks, or in the event that they lose their jobs, to be reemployed more quickly and more sustainably using the power of their transferable skills. Imagine what it could look like for the 1.1 million stars across Louisiana, helping them unlock greater economic and career mobility Think about what that could be for the tax base, for our employment base, for our economic development programs. And lastly, AI can be a very powerful tool for aligning economic and workforce development investments to the organic strengths of the community, not following the pack. The underdog has its own strengths, and we can use AI to align our programs to those strengths and create something really unique here in Baton Rouge. In closing, Kenny mentioned that I lived here for a time, so I want to provide a little bit of context about my connection to Louisiana. I was here during the years of 2005 to 2009. I arrived 2 weeks before Katrina, and I left during the depths of the Great Recession. So it was some tough times. In the interim, there was Rita, Gustav, and Ike. And we were working with GOSEP and FEMA in an old Maison Blanche department store that had been turned into a command center. It was very close to here. In fact, it is right over there, and we could all go throw a rock and hit it after this program is over. So this community is very, very close to that experience for me. But the toughest part about those 4 years was the frequency and the ferocity with which these storms would come just stymied our ability to react to them. We would barely be able to regain our footing from one disaster before the next would come and knock us back again. They started to overlap with one another. And in some ways, the COVID pandemic, the impacts that it's had on the workforce and on the workplace, it's as though we've all globally been through one giant storm. And just as we've gathered up the brush and begun the rebuilding process, GPT is like another storm that just made landfall. It's thrown us all back. And in addition to that, there's another storm that's forming right now out in the Gulf. Those storms won't keep coming. We need to prepare our infrastructure just as we do in our resilience plans. We need to prepare them for our own people and for ourselves as well. AI is a tool of possibility that can help us do that, but only to the extent that our ecosystem, the people here in this room, the standard bearers for this community, understand what it is and how it works, how it is being used in business and industry, what the art of the possible looks like, how it could serve job seekers, workers, and learners, and especially how to advocate for its ethical and responsible use, and to make sure that vulnerable populations have equitable access to this technology and training to know how to use it so that they too can benefit. Actions speak louder than words. And even though I have given you a 15-minute amazing PSA for procrastination and providence, I want you to lean in and take action after tonight. And as a result, I've curated some resources here in a QR code. At the simplest level, I want you to visit stellarworks.org. I want you to check it out. Consider helping a star that you know look for a job on StellarWorks. If you're an employer, consider listing a job on StellarWorks and hiring stars from it. You'll hear more about it later in the panel. You'll hear about something called the paper ceiling and tearthepaperceiling.org. Visit tearthepaperceiling.org and learn more about skills-based hiring and think about how you can advocate for that throughout Louisiana, both in the corporate sector and in state and local government. And educate yourself on AI and generative AI and how they apply to the community development work that this audience is most interested in. And these resources will help you with that specific use case. I want to thank you for having me here tonight. Don't procrastinate like I did. It can work out sometimes, but it might not. That was 20 some odd years ago. It might not work out in perpetuity. But it's great to be back in Baton Rouge. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really looking forward to tonight's panel and playing some cornhole with you later. Thank you.